Welcome to episode 3 of Eternal Horizons, a Magic the Gathering podcast where we look out on the legacy format and beyond. My name is Jasper Murison-Bowie, or just Jasper, and I'm here in 2026 with my good friend Francis Cooper, aka FGC. How's it going, Francis?
It's a new year, and this is definitely a new me. I sound very different, I'm sure, to last year.
Yep. You look completely different as well. I barely recognized you. So today we're going to talk about the state of the legacy format since the banning of Entomb and Nadu in November, whether it needs any further bans or unbans, and how we feel about legacy in general. But first, picking up from last episode, there's a little bit more cube chat to have. LSV recently published a video talking about some general thoughts and some under and overrated cards. And specifically, I wanted to touch on him saying that Library of Alexandria and Fastbond are overrated. As a known fan of Library of Alexandria, what do you make of that?
That's a bit of a call out, saying that I'm a known fan, as if people will know that I like Library.
I don't know. It's a very you card. I don't think anyone could dispute that.
That's true.
Sit there, do nothing, draw a card. I mean, this is maybe harking back to your like pre-combo era, as we talked about in episode 1. But
yeah, I did buy a library in like 2018, so that all adds up. I bought it in that time period. Yeah, I don't know. It's primarily used in old school in Constructed, which I think says a lot about it. I don't think it sees any play in any other Constructed format, but it probably is the best card in that format by quite a margin. Because, yes, you want to play games where you sit back and are not pressured to the point where you can draw 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards with it over that many turns and cleanly answer each of the threats that are presented. That's often the best way to use it. I do think it's still quite a high pick, but it probably gets crowded out in Powered Cube by often newer cards, like I think Psychic Frog or White Plume Adventurer are higher picks than Library of Alexandria, which upsets me. But
sure. Yeah. I think the thing that LSV says in the video, which I do agree with, is that if you're drafting it, it really is a build around. You have to pick a bunch of cheap removal, snuff out, and all the 1 and 2 mana, well, really 1 mana removal spells, just so that you can keep, because it costs you a land drop, so that you can keep interacting with what your opponent is doing. But obviously, it's still a super powerful card. I had a fun deck with it the other day, Lurus library deck, where just you get a library on the draw, and just having 7 cards in hand for the whole game just feels incredible, because you're like, well, I just get to answer everything and do everything, and it's still a really fun feeling. But I think I'm sort of inclined to agree that the format itself, the speed of it, and I think again we touched on this last time, is that the speed of Vintage Cube, the power of the threats is just higher than ever, and that means that you can't necessarily afford to spend your land drop on a colorless land and then hope to be able to draw cards off it over the course of a long game. But it still has a powerful effect and still a fun. I mean, fun in quotation marks, right? Fun for one of us.
Yeah. I think in 2026, if you're losing to Library, it's often more your fault than your opponent's, in that a large percentage of decks in 2026 are able to out-pressure a library.
Yeah.
Notably, the deck you drafted with Lurus, companions are very good with library. That's another thing, in that you can afford to go down an extra card and you always have a divination, right? A +1 in your sideboard.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, that is technically a boost to Library of Alexandria, which unless we didn't discuss, I don't think. So
no, that's true. That is very true. So at LSV.
It's one of the few really old cards that has gained a boost, right? Most of the really old cards are not, like, they don't synergize well with the types of cards that are printed in modern day. But yeah, I would still rate it higher than he says in the video. He says that he's not happy. I suppose I don't know. It's hard to say. It's much more of an emotional decision, saying if you're happy picking something first. Like, what if you ordered the cube? Would you be happy first picking one of your top 30 cards, or your top 50 cards, or your top 80 cards.
Yeah.
And where does library sit, and where does it sit in that grouping, and where would you be happy picking from in your first pick? And it's quite a fuzzy feeling, I suppose, a fuzzy metric of whether a card is good.
I think it's interesting. And I think that the same applies to Fastbond, where yesterday I drafted this Fastbond deck that I had a lot of fun with and went undefeated in games, 2-0-2-0-2-0 trophy. And I first picked a fetch, which I felt fine about. And I saw a Titania in the same pack, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll wheel this Titania. I'll sort of keep that in mind, because I think it's actually one of the ones that he calls out as an underdrafted card. And I agree. I really, really enjoy that deck. And so I picked like fetch, strip mine as my first 3 picks, I think, thinking I'd get the Titania back. The Titania was gone, but the Fastbond that had been in the same pack that I didn't want to first pick was there, I think. I think that was in the same pack. I could be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure it was. So it wheeled, and then I picked the Fastbond and was very happy and drafted like a Fastbond, Gush, Time Twister, Time Walk, Thespian Stage, Dark Depths, Crop Rotation, base green deck with like Courser of Crucifix and Green Sun Zenith and Eternal Witness and Leovold and Oko and just a bunch of stuff. And that turned out to be, I think, even better than it looked like it might be. It just really flowed as a deck, and I had some pretty nutty turn 1 turns where it was just like, okay, I'll, land, Fastbond, land, Gush, Courser of Crucifix, land. My opponent conceded on turn 1. So that was very fun. I'm not sure that it even contradicts what LSV says about Fastbond, because obviously it's not like I was out there first picking it, but I was very happy to be playing it. I enjoyed it a lot. I think when the deck comes together, it's still a lot of fun.
For sure. I guess something that comes to mind is, how many island forests did you get to pick in your deck?
Actually, only 1.
Okay.
Trop, but I had...
that is the best one, I suppose.
Yeah, I had 3 fetches, and I also had... Well, I had 4 fetches, technically, if you count Bountiful Landscape. So that was the other fetch that could get me...
Okay, either.
Island.
Yeah, that's often something that's... Well, especially when you're trying to make Fastbond work with Gush simultaneously.
And I had Ketria Triumph as well, so I had 2.
Yeah. Okay, because you need a lot of island to support Gush, but a lot of forest to support Corsair and Fastbond.
Yeah, having 4 fetches helped, definitely. So
yeah. So you're over the odds on fetches, for sure. I suppose the Bountiful Landscape.
Yeah.
Those are in and out of the cube as well. They're not always there.
True.
But yeah, that's interesting. I suppose maybe we could be thinking about... We're talking about wheeling Fastbond to build the deck, right? And it's a lower pick to build the archetype.
Yeah.
And then really you only want Fastbond in that deck. I don't know where else you would want Fastbond, except perhaps in like... I remember that I used to draft a lot with sort of blue-green, or then either blue-green black or blue-green red or 4-color Storm, which would play a Fastbond and a regrowth or something. Yeah. And you'd need to have both wheels and whatever, a Yawgmoth Swirl or something like that if you're going black. And that was the other place I would play Fastbond happily, but I don't know if there are any other decks. And I also don't think that sort of deck really exists anymore, because that used to be about playing... Oh gosh, what were those mana doublers, like the enchantments?
Oh yeah, like Mana Flare and
Heartbeat of Spring. Yeah, Heartbeat of Spring, Fastbond, Blue Storm was something that I could play.
That was I remember drafting that deck. That was a fun deck for sure.
It's not really there anymore, so it's been cut for Psychic Frog and Wipeland Adventurer.
Sad times.
Yeah, that is a bit sad. I used to love trying to make those terrible decks work, and now there are fewer and fewer of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, where I was going was that maybe Fastbond is more of a what's the big ninjutsu card? The 5-mana
Fallen Shinobi.
Fallen Shinobi. That's the sort of card where I might take a Baleful Strix 4th and then see a Fallen Shinobi and hope to wheel it, right? And there's a deck there that I'm picking. And that's like, I'm going to pick this green fetch land. Hopefully I wheel Fastbond. You're kind of doing that. It's not like you've, opened Entomb.
Sure.
And you're like, there we go.
That's
where
it wasn't
which
like,
is a different sort of start
as a pack, it
start draft.
Yeah, it wasn't that sort of pack. So it was a nice kind of place to be. Yeah. So that's that. I mean, I don't know. Is Fastbond in the Arena Cube, the Arena Powered Cube, which is just starting as well? I have never played the Arena Powered Cube, but I probably will, given that Vintage Cube on Magic Online is probably going away soon.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got the list in front of me, notably not ordered by Alphabet. So I'm going to just check. It is on the Magic Online Arena Cube. I'm not quite sure of the full difference list. Green was extremely underdrafted the last time that Arena was on. Cube was on Arena, rather. It might be underdrafted because it is underpowered. I think it is underpowered. So getting things like Fastbond, I don't think would be particularly difficult if you wanted to try doing that.
I might try and do that. I had a surprising amount of fun just messing about with that. I was quite impressed also by Ouroboros, which A, has very cool art, B, looks like a 4-mana 1/3, but actually ends games extremely quickly. I think if surprisingly quickly. If you have just like one or two other creatures, it just suddenly you're like, oh, I'm attacking for 16 or whatever, and it's like, oh, the game's over.
I did play against that at the pre-release.
Okay. That sounds...
I lost that game.
Weird. That is...
Turn 4 Ouroboros after like two mopey creatures on turn 2 and 3 in Limited was very difficult to beat. But yeah, they've added some Universes Beyond cards, which they decided to eschew in the first iteration of it. So you can now play with your favorite cards, Orcish Bowmasters and the One Ring.
Yay!
And they've trimmed some of the Boros cards, which people were saying were too good. Guide of Souls, Death Greeter's Champion, Sanguine Evangelist, and Hired Claw.
Jamie heartbroken about Guide of Souls.
Jamie heartbroken, yeah. I mean, Guide of Souls is really strong.
It's really,
but I still think that deck. I mean, obviously it is good, but I think the success of the deck is much more to do with it having a really high floor. Right, your creatures go into play and they do the thing that they do every game.
Yeah,
and it's going to perform well because of that. Whereas if you take risks, it's a much less riskier draft as well. Like if you take these cards that always do the same thing and they work better together, but by themselves do something,
right?
It's much less risky than taking like Flash.
Exactly.
Where you're like, oh, I never got anything,
and then it's bad.
Oh, my whole deck is part A's.
Yeah.
So
I think I think the cube has to be constructed to take that into account. And I think that's a very difficult balance to strike, because if you make all the combos too good, then and the fair stuff / aggro stuff too mopey, then you run the risk of just the games being very unbalanced, and you want the gameplay still to be interesting. So it's definitely one of the main things, particularly with, I think, a cube that is such high power level. That's one of the things that you have to tweak the most, probably. Shall we move on from Cube and talk a bit about Legacy? I've got a nice segue for you. Having been speaking about Library of Alexandria, there was a thread on Reddit the other day about Unbans, and
oh, brilliant!
It made me laugh because it starts out very reasonably. I think Legacy is in a good place, probably the best in a long time. We can talk about banning the One Ring, Tamiyo, but let's do the opposite and talk about what could be unbanned, writes this person. And starts with, Yawgmoth's Bargain. Fine, gives a little rationale about why Yawgmoth's Bargain maybe could be unbanned. Mind Twist, Frantic Search, Mana Drain. Library of Alexandria is the next card on the list. And it's like, I don't know how you sort of snuck that in there with all this other stuff, where I feel like you probably could unban, Yawgmoth's Bargain or Mind Twist or Frantic Search and have a reasonable format. I just having 4 copies of Library of Alexandria in a format seems interesting, to say the least. What do you make of the idea of unbanning Library?
Well, it's not unprecedented. The first iteration of the deck, the original control deck in Magic, had 4 Library in it and 4 Mana Drain. And I think it was realized very quickly that was silly, but that was a format with no meaningful early pressure in it. So much like in Cube, Library will be best when your opponent isn't doing anything. And I think now more than ever, Legacy is about doing things. Playing to the board, pushing your threat and protecting it. And Library is running counter to that. When I say there is precedent for this, it's been a really long time, and the format isn't really comparable. So I don't know if it's okay. I also don't think it is a prudent decision, given that what Library is like €1,000.
Yes, that is a significant factor, I think, that unbanning. I mean, I think that's true of any reserved list card, right? You don't want to unban reserved list cards if it can be at all avoided. It's just not really worth it.
Yeah, but I mean, Yawgmoth's Bargain's on the reserve list, and I think that's about €8.
That's true.
So you could unban that, and maybe it goes up to €40.
Sure.
Like, it's sort of not...
Yeah.
Really, I know we're a UK-based podcast. I don't know why I'm doing everything in euro, but I guess MKM dominates everywhere. But it's I think if you unbanned Library, even if it was not played, the price would spike, and then there would be a horrendous price memory to deal with, even if it wasn't played. So, I don't know. Is it worth doing that experiment?
I don't think so. And I think the thing about suggesting an unban like Library is like, there's so many contextual problems with it, like the price. And, I think you could have a genuine argument about the power level and whether it would fit and stuff. It's not, given what we've talked about in Cube, there are answers to it and so on. It's just, I don't think it necessarily promotes the kinds of gameplay patterns that you want. So,
well, I might be not what you want. I'd be very happy to play with my Library.
Okay.
I'd be very unhappy to have to buy 3 more libraries.
Sure. I think in general that's true of unbans. And I think it's when we're talking about unbans, for me, there's this overarching question, which is what is the purpose of the ban list? And are we trying to create the smallest possible ban list? So, if a card is maybe not banned for power level reasons anymore, we could take it off the ban list. So, like Frantic Search, for example, maybe it'll be fine. You mentioned that before we started recording. I just still don't know whether it contributes to the sort of meaningful, positive growth of Legacy and the gameplay experience that's tied up with. I don't know what you think to that. Whether it's important to have as small a ban list as possible over the enjoyment of the format and the sustainability of the format. For me, it doesn't really seem like a worthwhile trade-off.
I used to feel like that. I think that's how I was maybe 10 years ago.
To have the smallest possible.
Yeah, that was how I felt about it. And I think I was probably approaching the format from a much more purist perspective. Mm-hmm. Where it was like Magic ban lists are about that, about trying to keep it as small as possible and only banning things when they are dominating or problematic and unbanning things when they can no longer be so or could no longer be so, perhaps. I think that's, I don't know what I want to say. I hesitate to be as harsh as I'm thinking here. Like, I'm thinking now that might be a slightly childish perspective, which is me describing myself. But I think that Magic exists as a game played between human beings trying to have a good experience, primarily. And nobody really enjoys whatever Core Blade or VV Cauldron Summer or whatever as being like, and then constantly being in that environment where we have to ban it and then could unban. And if you tried to unban things, you would end up with that more. You would end up with that scenario more, where you'd end up with a broken format. And we already end up with a broken format quite a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think there are times when, because we had some modern unbans. I think it's interesting to look at that as a corollary discussion. Yep. And I think that those modern unbans, I think we both felt really positive about at the time. And I think that they can definitely build hype and kind of generate a renewed interest in a format when it's cards like Mox Opal and Splinter Twin, and it's kind of people feel like they get to go back to the format that they knew previously, and it's exciting on that front. I'm not sure that there are any candidates on the
top. Sensei's Divining Top.
Yes, okay. I mean, obviously, I want Sensei's Divining Top unbanned. I'm trying my damnedest
Give
to
me
keep
Sensei's Top. We both want Sensei's Top
unbanned for like wildly different reasons. But
I also have Painter now.
That's true. You've built.
I would
Painter.
Also play Goblin Welder Top.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Sensei's Top, but I think actually, speaking of like nostalgic fondness, many more people have a nostalgic anti-fondness for Top than they do. I think maybe like Deathrite is the closest candidate there, where people have a fondness for Deathrite and they would like Deathrite back. And you
have a very polarized position on that. I think, like, because it has been discussed quite a lot during 2025 if Deathrite Shaman should be unbanned, and the supposed purpose of that would be to control graveyard decks. And so there were lots of opinions being thrown around, and lots of people said they didn't like that idea, and lots of people said they did like that idea. Yeah. So I think it's more mixed than you'd get for something like Divining Top.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything like that you could unban, right? Like cards that I remember being legal in Legacy. Treasure Cruise.
I mean,
Dig Through Time.
Ren and 6 was also on the list.
Oh, I hated that. That was one of the periods of Legacy that I actually just completely tapped out. I just didn't play for 3 months because it was like, I'm just not playing this game where I get strip locked on turn 2.
The play, I mean, this comes back to what I sort of started with what is the game experience? What is the game experience with Ren and 6? It is absolutely awful. And I mean, 1 toughness creatures are also like even more soft banned than they are with Bowmasters, because it was just, oh god, that format was dreadful.
You
I don't think there are many people who are playing who would disagree with that. I mean, maybe feel free to write in and say, no, I loved that format, and maybe it's because you just loved playing with Ren and 6. But I just, again, as like strip lock is not fun. Like it's okay.
Turn 2 strip lock.
It's okay in Cube when there's like 1 copy of each of those cards, and you can, you don't, the games are so widely different because it's a singleton format and so on and so on. But when it's possible as a game plan in a format like Legacy, I just don't think it's that fun. So there are are there any candidates for you on the ban list that you would like to see taken off?
Another one that I talked about a lot last year with people was Mana Drain. People say you shouldn't unban Mana Drain because you can drain into the ring, which I think is certainly a problem. But also, I played a deck, Eternal Weekend in Vintage, where the whole plan was to Mana Drain into Stock Up and Gifts Ungiven.
Yeah.
And both of those cards are not getting banned in Legacy.
Yeah.
Neither will be. And there are definitely ways you can make Gifts Ungiven for blue insane in Legacy.
Yeah.
Like if you just get to cast gifts for 1 mana, that's usually the end of the game. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about Drain. Like, there's probably lots of not secret, but less obvious ways to make it really strong. It is perhaps worse in Legacy, where people play more cheaper spells than they do in Vintage, because you have Moxen that enable more expensive spells more frequently, and Days is more heavily played, and you don't get Moxen to play around Days, so that would make Drain worse, but it would basically punish anyone trying to do things that weren't Days decks, I think.
Which I think you could describe Legacy as a format that does that anyway. I mean, if you think about Legacy in the big picture, Xerox tempo decks have been the defining feature across the last
except top.
Yeah, true, except top.
I think the only exception for a long period of time was Miracles.
Yeah.
I think otherwise it has been Days Wasteland core.
Yeah.
And then there have been short reprieves like Underworld Breach.
Sure, I mean those short things, that's a sort of slightly different issue, right? Where it just becomes something.
Oko was quite good against Tempo, but Tempo was still really good, and Tempo also played Oko.
Yeah, exactly. So, I was going to say Oko was in a Tempo deck as well. I mean, Arkham's Astrolabe, again, just like these cards don't do things that are good for the format, I don't think. I mean...
Troll of Khazad-dûm.
Now that Entomb is gone, I think you can make an argument for...
But it's
I don't know. And people are like, oh, mana drain is just counterspell with the bit of extra text. It's like, not really. I think it's just because counterspell isn't seeing play doesn't mean that a card that potentially ramps you for 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. It's very different. It's meaningfully deck construction wise very different.
Well, it's like I think a lot of the time it's just counterspell with Dark Ritual on suspend or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is, and that or Black Lotus on suspend, whatever you want. I mean, it's colorless mana, but you've built your deck to abuse it. So, and often it's sometimes it's worse, sometimes it's better, but I think it's even if you're getting 2 mana out of it, that's so much in this format. So I don't know if that's a good idea. And so I'm scrolling up and down the list now, and I'm not seeing anything that jumps out at me, which is interesting. I guess. What about Necropotence? How do you feel about that card?
I mean, we've got a Necrodominance deck in the format right now, which is miserable to play against.
Yes, it is.
Just not fun to play against. Like, I'm not bothered. I'm not saying ban anything from it. I'm just saying you don't want more of that in the format, in my view. Like, I don't think it meaningfully... And I'm sure there are Necro Dominance fans out there who are like, yes, that's what I really want to be doing. Fine. By all means. Like, comboing off is fun. I do agree with that. But just as the interaction points, and I think maybe this can take us on to some general format chat about oops all spells. The interaction points are so limited with cards like that I just don't know that what is the format that we're trying to create or curate or whatever word you want to use for that. What are we trying to breed in terms of gameplay? And it's such a finely tuned, finely balanced question that just randomly dropping Necropotence in there, like, I mean, would you want to see Necropotence unbanned? I can't imagine that you would.
I don't think so. I think it would be... It's a perennial suggestion from a friend of ours, Simone, to have Necropotence be unbanned. And I guess the reason I ask is because it is legal in Timeless. As a 4-of, and has been since the inception of the format. And that is an interesting example. Well, until recently, I would have said it wasn't particularly good, but there was some sort of big championship where it top 8'd a bunch of slots. So that might no longer be true. And I think those decks do play 8 Necro as well, which lends more to your theory. So I was just curious if you had any thoughts on it. I think it would be there would be no positive aspect to it being legal. It just further compresses the format into games about resolving individual spells, a la Balustrade Spy or whatever, where it's like, oh, this happened, and I have protection, or you don't have a response, and so the game's over.
Yeah,
which is not. There's no tension other than the clenching of your buttocks when you look at your opening hand.
That's the title of this episode. The clenching of the buttocks when you look at your opening hand.
Well, that's what Oops does. You look at your hand and you're like, oh, I've got a Force of Will and a Nile Spellbomb. Am I dead? Yeah. Oh, I am. Interesting.
Yeah. So, bans and the format in general. I was watching Andreas Peterson, Iko Baronen's Metagame Monday video for this week. I would recommend those videos as a way to kind of see what's going on with Legacy. What he basically does is take all the challenge top eights and look at the archetypes that are in them and kind of discuss that. It's interesting, and I enjoy watching them or listening to them. And Oops is doing very well. I mean, also the metagame data on Goldfish, I think for the last week, Oops is now up to 8%. And I read somewhere that the win rate is like around 54, 55%. And I think the question for me, because I think overall Legacy, I mean, there's no doubt that it's miles better than it was before the Entomb and Nadu bans. I think that's pretty uncontroversial to say. But overall, I think it seems like it's been in a pretty good place. I mean, we had, relatively speaking, diverse top eights at Eternal Weekends EU and Japan, and different winners in terms of the archetypes. And now we're kind of at that point where I think it's reasonable to reflect and think, how do we feel about the format? I don't know where you're at with that.
Primarily, I massively prefer where we are now. I'm very happy that I no longer have to play against Entomb Reanimator. Well, Entomb to me Reanimator. I never really was bothered by the turbo deck. I think it's, that was just a worse version of what Oops is now, I think. Mm-hmm. And so people who want to play Reanimator still can in that way, so I'm happy that's gone. And then Nadu, I played a lot of Nadu, and I don't know if it would have continued to be, if it would have arisen as a problem. I think it was less certain that Nadu would be a problem than it would be that Oops would be a problem, if that makes sense,
yes.
If you ban Entomb. I think Reanimator really suppressed Oops. The combo Thoughtseize, Force of Will, like deck really put the screws to Oops, and getting rid of that means that I think if I were playing Oops, there's a good chance that I would feel happy playing against anything that wasn't Tamiyo tempo.
Yeah.
And that lends credence to, okay, well, if you have at the moment, Tamiyo tempo is 13% of the metagame, so I have 87% medium to good matchups. let's round that down. Let's say 80, because there's going to be matchups that are bad that I'm missing out on. But that means if you're a good Oops pilot, you should win a lot, I think.
I think that is what we're starting to see as well. I mean, there were 10 copies, 10 out of like 50-something decks that Iko Baronen was looking at as challenge top eights were Oops. And Oops, people always say also that it's a good online deck because, the games are short and you can do others. You can do sort of Sunday cleaning while you play the challenge or whatever because you get so much time between rounds, which I guess is true. And it's also true that there is not nearly as much Oops in paper as there is online at any given point. Like, you rarely see it translate. But I think that's also because Oops has been kept down previously by other things. Because it's not just when Reanimator was the best deck, it's not just that Reanimator beat Oops. It's also that lots of people were trying to skew towards, the non-Reanimator players all had to respect Reanimator and bring in, bring a lot more graveyard hate. And that has a problematic effect on Oops as well. So I think that we're now at a point where I'm very curious to see in the next, month or so as the challenge meta shifts and adapts. This is the most Oops I think we've had recently, and it's growing still in metagame share, and it's still winning a lot. I'm a little concerned, and I think that people say, oh, well, you can, it's easy to be Oops if you're prepared for it and people aren't respecting it enough. But I think that we're at a sort of crunch point where that theory will be tested, because you now need a plan for Oops if you're going to play Legacy online. And the question for me is there a good enough plan against Oops? Because there are hands that Oops has quite frequently, which, as you said earlier, you can keep Force of Will, Nile Spellbomb, and it's not good enough. And that's concerning to me.
Yeah. Often the Oops pilot will have a good inkling of what your plan will be to beat them. And there are various iterations or builds of Oops that are better or worse for different metagames. But the good pilots of Oops should know how to sideboard to beat the hate that they expect. So, in many ways, I'm thinking perhaps to play Graveyard Hate that doesn't fit the archetype that you're playing, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. To sort of do that. But then in game 3, once they've seen that, they will know. So and assuming they win game 1, they're still on the play in game 3. So really in those situations, the best Graveyard Hate is stuff like Leyline of the Void. And they don't have to respect spells that cost mana as much at all. So they get to sideboard differently again. So it's not straightforward. I generally think that it's putting quite an unpleasant chokehold on gameplay in those matches, right? If you play against Oops once or twice in a challenge, that would be enough to stop me wanting to play the event, because it's just, I'm here to play Magic. I don't feel like I'm playing Magic. Sometimes this is an interesting game. Most of the time it's not an interesting game.
Yeah.
For me,
because it's basically like Mulligan Simulator. It's opening hand simulator, and that's not the full Magic gameplay experience.
It definitely used to be opening hand simulator, and I think the payoff for that was that the deck wasn't particularly good. Mm-hmm. Right, so you would have an unpleasant experience having to play this mulliganing opening hand simulator thing, and if you had respected Graveyard decks enough, you were likely to see enough hate to beat them in games 2 and 3. Mm-hmm. Their deck is now meaningfully stronger in the way that it interacts with your hate, and also in the resilience of its mana, and also it's been built a lot better than it used to be. To the point where that isn't really enough anymore, I don't think. Like, you having enough Graveyard Hate has diminishing returns the more you put in, I would say. Mm-hmm. They will just play, because sometimes they will have Charbelcher, or they will have Rotting Regisaur, or something that just means it ignores that. So sometimes their plan is to completely not care about it, and you don't often know which of their plans it is. So, I don't know. The payoff of, you have this miserable time, but you most of the time will win, isn't there anymore. It's just you have this miserable time, and you're going to lose
a lot,
55% of the time. And if you're not playing a blue deck, you're going to lose a lot because you don't have any 0 mana protection for your hate, or which you need, things like that. So, I don't like it very much at all. I think it's like a massive net negative, and I don't really care about, we need to protect the innovations of people putting Memory's Journey in graveyard decks. Like, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you there, and not just because them having Memory's Journey in their deck makes comboing with Pain of Seven and Grindstone an absolute nightmare.
Well,
that was one of the
Spirit Guide. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that slightly upset me with this Metagame Monday was that there is not a single copy of Painter in the whole 59 deck collection there, which is quite sad for me. And I don't know. I mean, we've talked a little bit about how Painter is positioned, and I know you've just bought into Painter, and I'll be talking about Painter in many episodes of this, so I don't want to always talk about it. But I think it is interesting to reflect on how that has maybe shifted, and the matchups aren't ideal. You'd think. I mean, looking at this, there's tons of blue tempo. There are like 12 blue tempo decks there's not like a fifth of the a fifth of the decks are blue tempo decks, and that should be pretty reasonable. But I think Baragoyf might be the problem there for Painter.
Yep.
For
Baragoyf is really brutal.
For Oops, I think the question becomes, if you think it needs a ban, what do you think you would ban from it? And where did the problem originate so that you can stop those kinds of problems happening again?
I would ban Balustrade Spy and Undercity Informer.
Just both of them. Just ban the whole.
Yeah, I'd just kill it. And again, what are you protecting? You're protecting. We talked about this a lot with the cards that are on the ban list, and I think Balustrade Spy and Undercity Informer are much more emblematic of problematic gameplay than a lot of the ones on there. Like, okay, we're not talking about cards like Tinker, but I would rather have things like Dig Through Time be legal than Balustrade Spy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand what we're defending here. There's just no meaningful upside other than people get to do their laundry. And so I don't understand what we're protecting here.
Legacy,
I think the reason
people get to do their laundry.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, Legacy, people get to do their laundry. That's the main hallmark of the format. If it keeps on being like this, I think it became too good when the Modern Horizons 3 model double face cards were printed. And I don't think that's a secret.
No.
And they also knew about it. They've said they know that was intentional. Well, not intentional, but a side effect.
The MDFC lands, I just think they're a design mistake for formats like
totality.
Legacy. I don't know about in totality. I think that for decks like, the situation that we have with Oops, I think that is those lands' fault, basically. And
yes, definitely.
I don't know that it's, I think that the aim, I guess the stated aim is to reduce variance in terms of Screw and Flood, and that is a good aim overall. But I don't know that certainly for Legacy in its current state, it's problematic for me. But it's also weird to think about, like, you can't ban whatever, the Bog Goblin or whatever it fucking is.
Whatever that's called. Bog Goblin land. I think that MDFCs were primarily designed for limited, actually. Like, most of them are things like, I have a copy in my hand, actually, of one of them. I can find it. Which one is it? That's the front one. Legion Leadership, right? Which is a 1 and a hybrid Boros for an instant. Something gets double target creature's power, and it gains first strike. And then it's a Boros tapped land.
Yeah.
It's like, most of them are like that level of power. Yeah. And they're just things to increase deck building consistency in limited.
Yeah, reducing
some of
variance.
them, like Sink into Stupor, you could argue would definitely see playing constructed, right? Because of it reduces your variance, it comes in untapped, whatever. So, also the one Fell the Profane, that's the one that Oops plays that I think is particularly good, because you can kill a containment priest with it, and you don't have to have any, Anyway, so, I think they're a mistake.
I think what it comes down to for me is that at its core, the mana system is the single defining feature of Magic the Gathering. It's the most important thing about Magic when you compare it to other card games, where you could argue that card games since Magic have in various ways differentiated themselves by solving the resource system in different ways, right? Quote unquote, solving the problem of mana screw. But I think you can push that too far. And I think that you kind of, part of the beauty of Magic is that does happen sometimes. And when you're saying that they were designed for limited, I do get that. And I think that limited has been much better on average. Limited formats have been so good over the last X years compared to the previous X years. I don't know exactly where I'd put that boundary, but limited formats on average are pretty good now, I would say. And I think that's partly to do with the way that they're designing them. which is to include certain kinds of effects with a greater regularity and make sure there's a certain spread of stuff at common and uncommon and so on, and reduce the impact of game-breaking mythic rares, although obviously you were talking about playing against a Roboroid in the pre-release earlier, so that's still there. And
yeah,
but I'm not saying that there are no balanced MDFCs. That would be ludicrous, because you've just described one that seems very fine. But I just think that they pushed it a bit too far with a number of them that are playable in Legacy, and I just, I don't know.
Having them come and play untapped, I think, is a big deal. I think that really was a step too far. I think ones where, because you can basically always justify playing the tap land that is a spell, one copy in your limited deck.
Yeah.
And having it come into play untapped, like, what is the benefit there? Oh, well, maybe. And even in limited, you probably only want to play one, because you don't want to deal 3 to yourself very often.
No. So for me, that seemed like a clear design towards constructed. And that's where I think they should probably not have done
stopped.
That.
I would have stopped there. So but that was a long time ago that they did that. That was in Battle for Zendikar, I think. They had the first cycle, but they were mythics. So, got to push your mythics. sell packs.
Sell packs.
And then they were like, oh, well, that was mythic 4 years ago, so it's uncommon now, and we're going to make them really cheap as well. I think all of the ones that were mythic in 2020,
they were like CMC 8 spells, like Seagate Restoration is like, okay, that's a swingy, interesting card, but the ones that are just like generic good card attached to land, or like overcosted effect.
In Vintage, the what's it called, Witch Enchanter sees play, whereas they used to play. This one, no, the full mana 2/2 disenchant.
I know that card.
But they play Witch Enchanter now, but I don't know if they still do. But I don't think they do. They used to play the 7 mana make 2/4/4 flyers card.
Wow,
which was really interesting as their land / card you put under Chrome Mogs, because some games they would play 7 mana for 2/4/4s, and that's kind of interesting as a gameplay variation. Yeah. Whereas, and you have to play around it, oh, you've got 5 mana, I should wasteland your Ancient Tomb. It matters. Whereas now it's well, we actually just get to play 4 disenchants, which are creatures and lands. And it's great, cool.
Certainly winds me up.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just going to kill your as a saga, which are these things. And that, why would you want to make the texture of games less varied and everything more efficient? What's the point? What are you trying to do? Oh, sell packs, probably. But
I think that for me, what you've just said crystallizes something, which is that I want the decisions to be made you make your deck more consistent in deck building and through cutting yourself off certain things to gain certain things, not just by having everything all the time. And there are 2 different kinds of efficiency there, and I like one of them a lot. I love synergistic card interplay and deck building and all of that stuff, and I don't like the variance reducing kind of just straight efficient, this card does everything approach that Anyway, that's maybe, I don't know, are there any other bands, general format thoughts where I don't want to get bogged down in the bog of
Yes, okay. I think otherwise the format seems completely fine. I will say that Eldrazi seems very highly played, which personally I think isn't very interesting, because I don't like playing against it. That's a personal thing, but I don't see it as a problem, it being the second best most played deck at the moment. And then notably also you have Cradle Control at 6%, Affinity at 4.5%, and Ocelot Pride midrange, meaning energy, at 3%. Then you've got Initiative. These are all on the front page of Goldfish, and Death and Taxes. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dedicated non-days creature decks on the front page of Legacy, which is great.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
That's I can't remember when that happened last. So
no, that's surprisingly positive, I think. Yeah.
Notably, no Cephalid or Painter, though.
Yeah, it's sad for the two of us, but we can't just design for us, sadly. I don't know whether when those bans happened, everyone was saying, and I would put myself in this camp, I was like, oh, I'm not sure they've gone far enough. Do we need to ban Tamiyo? Do we need to ban the One Ring? And I think it's been interesting to sort of watch that sentiment evolve over time, and whether we still think Tamiyo should go, whether we still think the ring should go. And I think then again, it becomes a question of philosophy. Like, are we banning, like, what are we banning things for? Because I think that the One Ring and Tamiyo are both egregious Magic cards. Like, they're very, very good. And maybe they're too good. But if they're not contributing to an unenjoyable metagame / gameplay experience to too great a degree, do they still need to go? I don't know where you come down on that front.
Based on what I'm looking at now, I don't think it is necessary to ban either of them. Like, in terms of metagame health, there are lots of non-Tamiyo, non-One Ring decks seeing play and seeing success. I suppose maybe the main outlier is that tempo is very high, right? We're pushing 20% blue red plus Demir. I can see in Andreas's video he's talking about 12 top 8s for tempo, 10 of which are Demir. I'd say Demir is a much more Tamiyo focused tempo deck than Is It.
It is. Low-hanging fruit.
But I don't know if that's an issue in itself. I can see that Doomsday has Tamiyo predominantly in it, and so does Beanstalk Control. But I think this is kind of fine. The only thing that I don't like about this format is that I would reasonably see changing is the amount of moves.
Yeah.
I don't like Eldrazi there either, but I wouldn't say it's reasonable to act on that change. So, yeah. What do you think?
I think that I agree partially with what you're saying in terms of the metagame share. I think I was sort of leading that question a little bit. I don't know that Tamiyo decks are at a problematic point right now. And I think the format is I think we've already covered that the format is much, much better than it was. I don't know that in the long term, Tamiyo and the One Ring are healthy cards to have around, because Tamiyo as a design, the fact that you can have this 1 mana spell that, if left unchecked, draws you a card every turn and then also just wins you the game over the course of a few turns. It's this sort of very hybridized threat where it can do a lot of different things. The card that Andreas has chosen to represent that blue-black tempo deck is Kaito, which I think is interesting because it's a difficult to block threat that you can ninjutsu Kaito in for. It makes you clues. It, as we said, the Planeswalker side of it regrows your spells and lets you draw half your deck. And I think that when you speak to people at, say, an LLM, like a local small tournament, and you talk to the non-blue, sort of like your people who like Legacy and come to weeklies and stuff, maybe don't play online, I think in the long run, having cards like that in the format, it just becomes a bit of like I'll lose again to this one card that is, impossible to answer, like, in a way that, because it only costs 1 mana, you're never going to be, it's like, yeah, okay, I play a deck with 6, 7, 8 copies of Red Blast. I'll Red Blast your Tamiyo. Fine, that's okay. I've dealt with it, and I can Red Blast it either side. Red Blast is a great answer for it, but you're still rarely feeling good about that. Plus, Brainstorm and the clues and stuff give you answers to, or ways to blow people out in response to removal and so on. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, unless I like playing with Tamiyo, it goes nicely in the various artifact decks that you and I have both played. And it's a great, great card. I don't know in the long run that, I guess we'll see. It's people always joke that Deathrite Shaman was a 1-mana planeswalker. Tamiyo is literally a 1-mana planeswalker. And I don't know that I feel good about that power level in the long run.
Yeah. I wouldn't be unhappy if it was banned. Right. If we're looking at it like that. And I think your point about how people feel playing against it is particularly salient. Right. When I played the LLM in December with Tamiyo and the One Ring in my deck, the number of slumped shoulders as I put cards onto the stack was very, very high. Even if I thought my matchup was bad into the Collector Roof, Orcish Bowmasters decks, whatever, Khan, both Tamiyo and the One Ring always elicited sort of, okay, yeah,
here we go again. Ah, shit.
Yeah. Yeah, but that is what people think. And I don't think they're wrong. Both of the cards are so hard to engage with profitably in any way.
Yeah.
And what is it? Suplex and Consigned Memory are good against the One Ring. Cards like Daze and Spell Pierce and Wasteland and Force of Will are, but you're not getting ahead with any of that really unless you're attacking already. And cards that are good against Tamiyo aren't if they have a Brainstorm and a mana. And it's very easy to not play your Tamiyo on turn 1 and then play it on turn 2. Oh, it's a very complicated play. It takes a long time to work out how to do that. No, it doesn't. Anybody could do that.
Yeah.
So it's just too good. I do think Tamiyo is to Brainstorm as Renin 6 is to Wasteland, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that one breaks the other.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tamiyo is completely fine in formats that don't have Brainstorm in them.
Yeah.
It's not very good in Vintage at all because you only have one Brainstorm.
Yeah. That's an interesting point, actually. It is not very good in Vintage. And that seems unlikely to change. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying I would ban... The next ban announcement is, February 9th? I'm not saying I would ban Tamiyo and the One Ring right this second. But I think it was odd that they didn't really mention it in the ban announcement. And I think that in the long run, people are going to keep talking about it. And I think that one has to just be careful. And people, ban, unban chat, it can be very fatiguing. But the fact of Legacy now, given how little sort of top-level support from Wizards it gets as a format, it's basically a community format in many respects, except that, not the Wizards still control the ban list. So just in terms of the vibe of it, particularly in the local scenes, these elements of player sentiment, I think, are really important. And if the people that play online, which is a smaller percentage of Legacy players overall, think that, the format's great because I'm enjoying myself here and it's more balanced here, that doesn't necessarily equate to people enjoying it in paper and in person. And I think that is, one just has to be cautious of it, really.
Yep, definitely. Fatigue with Magic has been very high for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that has been due to these sorts of printings. And you've seen a lot of people stop playing because of it. People have always said Magic's too expensive, especially when I started playing Legacy, people would say Legacy is dead, it's too expensive, the reserves list has killed Legacy.
Yeah.
That was 12 years ago. And so I don't think that that is an argument for it being difficult to play, but cost has always been overcome by the players, and I think the more problematic part is this: we're just going to keep printing horrendous cards that ruin games that you have to buy to play the game properly in the way that you used to, where you'd try and maximize your deck. And maximizing your deck now means playing our mythics. And that wasn't true in Legacy for a long time, and that's actually probably a good reason why many people started playing it in the first place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, people becoming fatigued with, oh, yes, here's the new Psychic Frog, here's the new Ren and 6, here's the new Oko. And the Oko, Ren and 6 Psychic Frog at the moment is Tamiyo One Ring.
And it's telling that maybe the most threatening deck in the format that we've talked about most about needing a ban is the deck that just ignores all of that by trying to kill you on turn one. And again, that's not what people want out of Legacy, I don't think. Like, the number one question that non-Legacy players seem to ask is, or the opinion that they seem to hold of Legacy is like, oh, I don't want to play that. It's a turn one format, and I'm not interested in that. And people have thought that for a long, long time when it's not been true. And I think that it's unfortunate that, obviously it still isn't a turn one format by any stretch of the imagination, but the fact that Oops is pushing into that spot is, Oops, and there were two like unmasked reanimator decks as well in that column.
Yeah.
And I think those are much more fine because they're just much less resilient. I don't think it's a problem for those decks to exist, but they shouldn't be the best thing to be doing, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think having the best thing to be doing would be a play pattern that reduces agency. It's just not a good thing. Like, you could you just reduce games to a shortened version of what they could be, and you're essentially having to use mulliganing as your only tool to interact with the game a lot of the time. And then if you do stop them doing that, you're both hampered on resources, and then it just becomes a bit of a crapshoot. So, I don't know. I wouldn't say that's the best thing to have represent the format as this is what you're going to face the most, or this is what you should be building if you want to have the best deck. Yeah, I don't know what else there is to say on this topic other than broadly this format is better than the previous one. Oops is concerning. Tamiyo and One Ring should be on like a
watch list,
keeping an eye on you. Yeah, a watch list. I don't know what that would do, right? Tamiyo, the things about Tamiyo especially that were true before are true now.
Mm-hmm.
And things about the One Ring that were true before are still true, but I think is being kept in check more by the popular decks in the metagame, right? The One Ring decks are worse against the Oops decks than, playing against maybe Reanimator, and the Oops decks were being kept down by Reanimator, that sort of thing. So that's just a metagame thing. And maybe if Oops goes away, then One Ring decks come back. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think, this is an interesting opportunity for the format to have a crack at self-correcting against Oops. I think that these challenge results from this past week will, or, by the time this goes out, it will be, last week. But we'll see. We'll see how things pan out. And I'm very curious always to hear what people think. I mean, there's definitely, I know that there are some dedicated Oops pilots who feel like it's a skill testing thing and so on, but I just don't know that it's the right. I think for me, it just always comes back to game experience and what it feels like to play the format. And if it's not fun in the long run, it's going to be much more difficult to convince people to pick up the format that is already among the most expensive. And I think that concerns me a little bit. And I think that's why I was sort of talking about it being a community format. Also because of proxies and so on, I think that plays a role too. So I guess we'll see what happens. Yeah. I'm curious. I don't expect any bannings on February 9th. And I would like to dig a bit deeper into why the deck that I play isn't seeing that much representation, quote unquote, at the top tables. So that involves me playing a bit more with it and sort of trying to tweak it to make it fit that, I suppose.
You did have some success recently when you did play.
When I did play, I trophied a league with it. I don't really have time to play the challenges at the moment, so it's difficult to say. And it didn't feel bad at all. It was like a red-black splashing for Baragoyf out of the sideboard, basically painter list, but otherwise fairly standard. Plenty of red blasts, furies, lightning bolts, that sort of thing. it doesn't fill me with joy, the idea of going into like playing against Oops twice a league kind of thing. But, you know, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Do you think you'll play that this week then? I think we're both going to our paper local.
Oh, yeah. What am I going to play this week? I have a few different ideas. I think I would like to possibly play Oswald. That's a card that I enjoy playing, but maybe try and figure out a way for it to be less uninteractive / clunky / slow. And the other thing would be red painter or blue painter, somewhere in that space for me. What about you?
Yeah, I have been enjoying thinking about painter. And if I were to do that, I might play the Basim deck again with the Lady Octopus. But I have also been thinking about Oswald. I've been thinking about playing it with blue and playing Corridor Monitor.
Sweet.
Which I'm thinking about, but I think what's most likely is that I play a sort of black-green mid-range deck. The first deck I ever played in Legacy was that Maverick deck with Deathrite Shaman and Depth Stage. And I've sort of been tinkering with a fair green-black mid-range deck, which has 4 Barrogoyf and 4 Orcish Bowmasters in it. But it's a Reclaimer deck with a sort of land package and depths and a couple of crop rotations, a small package for that. So I might play that.
Sweet.
I don't have the cards for that online, and it's fun playing things like that in paper.
Yeah.
You get a lot of varied games, and I like playing with all the cards. So we'll see. I did do a deck donation for that to Dukes on Twitch. So he's made a couple of videos with that list, which I'm yet to watch the second one. That was released today.
Sweet.
So
maybe that can be a little trailer for next episode. Maybe we can dive a bit more deeply into that, and you can report back from the local if you end up playing it. / if you want to play it online, I can always lend you cards. That's not a problem.
Oh yeah, thank you. That would be good.
So yeah, I think maybe let's leave it there. Do get in touch with us. Let us know what you think about bans, unbans. Please leave us a comment. Please,
MDFCs.
Yeah. Please defend MDFCs to your heart's content, or don't. I don't know. Like, are they even cards that people? Anyway, let's. Okay.
I love MDFCs. They're my favorite thing.
If they ban MDF, if they'd never printed MDFCs, I'd never still be playing Magic.
Yeah.
Arena Cube is out. Check out Arena Cube. I'm definitely going to try and play Arena Cube for the first time, since it sounds like Vintage Cube on Arena instead of on Magic Online.
With Booster Tutor.
With Booster Tutor, one of my all-time favorite like cube cards, because it's just fun. So I definitely want to draft some forced Booster Tutor, first pick Booster Tutor, Black Lotus or Booster Tutor.
I think it is a first pick card.
Yeah. I mean,
to be clear, you have to open it. I think it probably is, because it can always be anything, right? It's like 50-50 it can always be Black Lotus.
It can always be Black Lotus. So that brings us to the end of episode 3 of Eternal Horizons. Thank you very much for listening. To everyone that listens to the first 2 episodes, as I said, we'd love to have comments, or if you could follow us on Spotify, YouTube, blah, 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 where you get podcasts, if you are that way inclined. So that wraps it up. Thanks very much. Cheers, Francis.
Thanks, Jasper.
Bye.